Most independent films lose money. I was just listening to a podcast about this yesterday, and I wanted to make a video because I personally know at least 5 filmmakers who have had films that have gotten into Sundance, that have done the whole run on festivals, that have been successful, that have not gotten any kind of a distribution deal, at least not one with a minimum guarantee. And so, most films lose money unless you're, one of those sort of unicorn type films at this point that can go to a Venice Film Festival, but not just go, win, be the top film. Then you have a shot. But on top of the fact that you basically have to nail the film and be, top tier, excellent, you also are going to have some ability to play the game. And a lot of filmmakers are reticent to do that, but also, the truth is, it's not really a game that you can win. But I thought it was interesting because this was on this podcast, well-known podcast, very successful indie film producer, 30-year career, running an independent studio, and still is basically the films that she didn't say it so much, but, the films that they're making and producing and putting out, a lot of them are just not landing deals with minimum guarantees. A studio like Netflix or Hulu, or Amazon Studios, Apple Studios, they're developing all of their projects in their own studios internally. And so it becomes a question of how do you get market penetration? How can you generate interest for your projects or who you are if you're not, already inside of the studio system? And those are the questions I get from people because, look, I'm an independent filmmaker. My films are not, being made, at Netflix studios. But I still managed to produce and finish them, and some of them have even been successful. So I should say some of them have made money, And so I do have people reach out to me in the comments or on Instagram or whatever, people in life, and they're kind of like, well, what's the secret? I have this idea. I have this script. It's a really great script. And it seems like now more than ever, the quality is not really the most important thing. If you want to go down, again, as I said, the traditional route, then you got to have something that, has this kind of, a world-class type film. And obviously that costs a lot of money to make something like that too. But then you've also got to sort of get very lucky and have all the right connections and have the resources for the marketing. So, that's like winning the lottery, I would say, if you're just your average person out there who's writing something and you want to try and make it. And this is what she talked about. There's individual financiers who make something because they just want to make it. But, don't kid yourself. Any investor that you're going to find is ultimately going to be in this because they like films and they want to be involved in films. And they're hoping to get their money back. They're hoping to make some money. You don't pour hundreds of thousands of dollars into something if you don't think that you at least have a good shot at doing that. So if most films that are being made are not getting distribution with a minimum guarantee, and they're not, playing at one of these big festivals where they're just getting straight up acquired by a studio, what is happening to most of the film projects that you see out there? Well, they are going to aggregators, which is smart, or small distributors, which I would not do. And they're getting their films platformed. Well, then once the film gets platformed, they realize that the marketing of the film becomes the real challenge. And that's where folks are not going to help you. So a distribution company might come in and say, oh, we're going to spend $100,000 on your, your P&A campaign for your film. And they may or they may not. A lot of that is probably just going to get sucked up by internal fees, their internal publicist, their internal marketing team spending their own consulting time, money that they hope to go get back, and they're going to get paid first, unless you can get some kind of a deal where you're going to get paid on the gross. But the truth is you have very little room to negotiate these deals. When the distribution company sends you a contract, it's like, here's the contract, take it or leave it, because they know that your film is probably not going to make any money for them. And so they want it in their catalog, and they're sort of willing to put forth a degree of effort so that they can add one more in their portfolio. But that's pretty much it. So how do you get past this? How do you break beyond this? How do you find success? Well, a lot of us obviously moonlight in the commercial and advertising world. I mean, that's the true thing, and it's not a secret. We're out here, making a living doing commercials, and that's all good. I also, have found that making films, I found that making my own film kind of created a bit of a calling card. There's people out there who have projects that they want to get done, and they have the resources, and so they're looking for they're looking for a filmmaker or a director who can sort of take it to the finish line. And those are projects that have become kind of for hire projects for me, but they're great experiences. You develop really nice partnerships with people, and you learn the business more. You learn how to make film successful, and you get kind of more at bats, in which is a pretty rare opportunity. Like, filmmaking is something that you pretty much have to scrap and fight for to even get the chance to make a film. So any opportunity you can get is obviously good, and it's a great learning opportunity. I think that the overall, I think if you want to find success with films as a filmmaker, and I know I've talked about this before, it's really about the creator economy. So it's like, how do you build your own following? And most artists are, and I know a lot of artists are reticent to do that because they don't want to have to take on, the burden, the anxiety, the frustration of trying to create content in an extremely saturated environment where there's very little room for new media awareness. But you can make an art film for yourself, and I've done plenty of that, but if you want to reach an audience, you have to find a way to cut through, and it's the marketing that's available to you. And honestly, advertising without a built-in audience is not that effective anyways, because you end up spending all your budget generating awareness, and so you build a good foundation of awareness, but they're still not engaged enough to convert, to buy the movie ticket, fulfill your Kickstarter or whatever. So you need to find a way. As a creator to be a filmmaker that is able to deliver products to people who want to support you. I know I bang this drum a lot, and I think the reason I do it is because it's the only way that I know how to make these things. I was listening, like I mentioned, this podcast, and I find it affirming. Like, every conversation I hear from industry insiders is like they've either got some kind of play with their clout or their connections, or they're pretty much doing the same thing. They're finding a way to develop a project that they know that they can do some kind of guerrilla marketing, or that's going to have a built-in audience. And so that's, I think, where your mind has to go if you want to have projects that are successful. You gotta be in the territory of something that you can effectively market and distribute and release yourself. So what's the secret to indie film distribution? You have to develop properties that have a built-in audience or that have wide appeal, and you have to build those audiences and speak to them directly, and you have to deliver products to them that are going to allow them to support you at the scale you need for your project to be realized. Now, the other way, you can go and find rich independent investors to support you. And if you've got those connections, great. I know a few filmmakers in Chicago where that's their whole kind of bread and butter, that or getting money from grants. But, if you want to tell a certain type of story, then that's not always going to work. I think the really great, amazing thing about being an independent creator and finding ways to succeed and thrive in an ecosystem of your own doing is just, you can make whatever you want. And so right now I am developing, I'm actually in production on an anthology series that I've been creating. And the first one we just shot is extremely experimental, like wildly experimental. I would not try to do it if this was something that I was concerned about making money on. The next project that I'm doing, we actually got a grant for. So it's a small project, but it's going to be part of it. And then I have a third that's already written that I'm going to probably try and do in the spring next year, and just string together, money. I did the experimental film. I self-financed, so I've been stringing together money, not unlike when I did my first film, but I'm doing it on an even smaller scale. And I'm not going to crowdfund at the beginning. I'm not trying to raise any money. I'm going to go make the stuff myself and hopefully package it up in such a way that people will want to support it. And I will probably do crowdfunding or a Kickstarter of some kind at the end once it's all ready to go, and make some really cool posters and t-shirts and Blu-rays and collectibles for folks who want to support the project. So the first one that I just finished, we're putting a bunch of content around the making of, because we shot it on some cool anamorphic lenses, the blazers, and some other interesting kind of production elements I want to talk about. So the first one is called the Wilted Flower, and that one is in the can, although, post-production takes a while. So we're going to be working on that one. We're working on it now. And then the Great Balloon, which is sort of the centerpiece of the anthology, that one is going to be in production, I think, November, December. I'm still working on it, but we need to do it for this grant this year. And then the last project is, like I said, going to happen in the spring. In the meantime, I've got a few other kind of short things that may sort of dovetail with this, or I may kind of package it all up. But I like this idea of like being a creator. You're making your own stuff. You're not waiting for people to show up. You can make what you want. And then ultimately, asking for people in your community, people who appreciate what you do, to support it. So if you're interested in my films and what I do, you can support me right now. If you go to remziatasi.com, I'm selling my first film, Bad Animal. I've got Blu-rays of that. I've also got a few fine art prints. But also you can just, check it out or subscribe. That would be great. I'm trying to make this stuff every week. We have been slammed with commercials, and so we've also got 2 feature documentaries that are in production with some other partners. So it's a very busy time, but I know this stuff is valuable, and the reality is you got to find ways to stay alive in the creator ecosystem. And so making stuff that's valuable to people is what it's all about. So if you appreciated it, guys, subscribe, drop me a like. I got a cool video coming to you next week. Thanks again.